Wow, 2022 really hasn't been a good year to be a Witcher fan. Not only has the Netflix show stumbled through 2 disastrous seasons of a story that it doesn't have a clue how to tell, made by people who seem to actively hate the source material, but the tail end of the year also brought the crushing news that Henry Cavill, probably the only good thing in the entire production, and apparently the only person on set who seemed to care about the lore, had finally had enough and was quitting his role as Geralt after the 3rd season. But hey, I guess Christmas really is the time of miracles. And so, on December the 25th, we were treated to a 4-part miniseries set 1,000 years before the events of The Witcher. An epic story of 7 estranged warriors who come together to fight an unstoppable empire, bring humans and monsters to the world via the conjunction of the spheres, and create the very first version of a Witcher. I know this because Minnie Driver and her Botoxed face told me this in literally the first 5 minutes of the first episode. Because truly, there's nothing more compelling than a storyteller who literally summarizes their entire story before it even begins. But let's get down to business, dear viewer. Is The Witcher Blood Origin actually any good?
Serious?
No, it isn't. What it is shit. A shockingly amateurish, clumsily written, horrendously acted, ridiculously contrived insult to the work of Andrei Sapkowski, infused with so much intersectional identity politics that you honestly could have convinced me the entire project was intended as some clever satire on modern storytelling.
Fuck.
It is, quite simply, a disaster from the first teeth-gratingly irritating scene to the final calamitous act, and one of those rarest of projects that seems to have united fans and professional critics in their absolute contempt for its existence. And since I'm still desperately trying to hold on to the last shreds of my Christmas cheer, let's get this over with quickly. So the story's set about 1,000 years in the past, before the arrival of humans in the world. Elves are the dominant species here, although since they're not immortal and have got no particular powers or abilities that are unique to them, they're functionally identical to humans anyway, so whatever. Anyway, the world's divided between the 3 main elven kingdoms that have been at war with each other for the past 1,000 years. Fucking really? 1,000 years? Like, how? Why? How the hell could a medieval economy maintain a state of constant warfare for 1,000 years? Wouldn't they run out of supplies, weapons, resources? People? Anyway, the King of Cintria has brokered a peace deal between the 3 factions, marrying his sister off to one of the other factions to seal the deal. Unfortunately, he didn't count on her being a strong female character, and so instead she stages a military coup that wipes out all of the royal families and promptly proclaims herself empress of a new united empire. Wait, what? So you convinced most of your senior generals and officers to prevent a treaty that would have brought peace to your world so that you could merge all the factions into one empire and bring peace to your worlds?
Not a great plan.
Oh, and apparently the commoners are really happy about this for some reason because they hate the royal families that led them into war and are totally willing to follow an empress instead. I think the writers really need to look up the word empress in a dictionary because I don't think it means what they think it means. Also, I love the fact that everyone who's in on the conspiracy very publicly walks out of the signing ceremony before it's been concluded and nobody thinks that this is even slightly unusual. Now, I'm no expert, but if you're at a high stakes negotiation with hostile factions that have been at war for 10 centuries and a number of senior personnel suddenly start leaving the room without warning, that seems like a very obvious red flag that something very bad is about to happen. Anyway, the upshot here is that strong female character is now in charge of a unified empire, although she's not really in charge because the mastermind behind the plot was actually Lenny Henry? Seriously, is this dude just available for any shit fantasy series you fancy making these days? Ah, whatever. Lenny Henry's an evil sorcerer who wants to use a bunch of ancient tower things to open portals to other dimensions so that they can lead an army through and conquer them. I'm not entirely sure why he thinks they'll be successful since they were barely able to take charge of their own world, but who cares? The point here is that help is at hand in the form of strong, diverse female character who used to be one of the most powerful warriors in the world. Because, you know, of course she did. But she's since turned her back on her warlike ways and become a travelling singer instead. Although fuck knows why, because 10 seconds of listening to her mangle the Black Rose was enough to make me resent the very concept of music. And I'm not kidding, within about 2 minutes of her introduction, she's saved a young serving girl from a toxic white male, crippled 2 of his mates with throwing knives, gotten a hearty round of applause from the ethnically diverse crowd, and admiring looks from the young girl who wants to grow up just like her. This is the kind of shit that happens when rich liberal Californians that have never been in a fist fight or a working class pub in their entire lives have to write a scene with both. It feels about as believable and authentic as Steven Seagal's hairline. Anyway, wouldn't you know it, she ends up getting arrested later because it turns out the stabbing people and beating them unconscious doesn't go down too well with the local law. Although on that subject, I love how this village consists of about half a dozen mud huts with maybe 30 people, and yet it seems to have taverns, law enforcement, and even a brothel. Does it also have a 5-star hotel with spa facilities? This is the kind of stuff you would find in big towns with affluent populations, not tiny little settlements at the ass end of nowhere. Anyway, that's when she runs into dumb white male character who got exiled from his clan for sleeping with strong female princess and ended up here instead. So they have a fight, and of course she gets the better of him, despite him being about twice her size, but then he gets bailed out of jail because apparently his father wants him to come home in time for the peace treaty. Wow, that was lucky. Talk about good timing. How exactly did his father know where he was when he'd been exiled from his homeland and could have ended up literally anywhere? How did he expect this messenger to find him and bring him back across thousands of miles of open country in a matter of days? Don't know. But before he can leave the island, strong, diverse female character escapes from her prison because this girl don't need no man, and then she conveniently runs into her sister who also wants her to come home. Wow, do these people have like a Find My Phone app or something? But anyway, she gets killed by a group of assassins who obligingly emerge from cover when it's time to take down strong, diverse female character, and then obligingly attack her one at a time so that she can fight them off. Again, I think the writers need to look up the word assassin because I don't think it means what they think it means. Anyway, wouldn't you know it, she ends up joining forces with dumb white male character, and together they seek out strong, diverse female character number 2, because I guess we don't have enough of them already in this story. And together, these 3 stereotypes have to recruit a diverse team of warriors to take on the might of the Empire, defeat the bad guys, and save the universe. What an absolute unmitigated calamity of a show this is. It's so bad that it almost makes The Witcher seem good by comparison. Every single aspect of it, from the contrived story where everyone just runs into the exact person they need at the exact time, to the hammy performances from actors who look embarrassed to be there, the lazy fight scenes straight out of Rings of Power, and dialogue that feels like it was written by a 12-year-old that just discovered the word fuck. It's all so crushingly weak, rushed, and dull that it genuinely makes me question who this show was even supposed to appeal to. Oh yeah, modern audiences. Everything that was bad about The Witcher is 10 times worse here, probably because there's no one even remotely competent keeping it on track. Remember how I complained before about how difficult it was to get a sense of the geography of this world, because every location, faction, and race looks the same as every other, so that you never have any visual or cultural clues to help you tune in? Well, it's good to see that they've learned absolutely fuck all from that. The action zips back and forth between huge fortified cities, isolated island villages, and small market towns with absolutely no sense of where they are or how they fit into a wider world. And it's not like the casting helps much either. Tell me, what exactly does a member of Raven Clan look like? Are they white? Black, Middle Eastern, or Asian? Don't know, because all of them show up at various times. What exactly does your average citizen of Zintrea sound like? Scottish? Irish? English? Again, no idea, because instead of each faction and location having a distinct ethnic and cultural makeup, what you get instead is a confusing mishmash of different actors from every possible ethnicity and region just kind of thrown in together. It's exactly the kind of shit that they pulled in Rings of Power, and it works just as well as you might imagine here. And the thing is, it didn't even have to be this way. You could just as easily have decided that the Zintreans would have been played by white English actors, the Prussians would be Middle Eastern, and the Darwins would be black. Then you could have all the diversity you could ever dream of, but still give your audience something to help them understand what each faction is supposed to be. But nah, the writers live in a diverse 21st century metropolitan bubble, and instead of taking a moment to consider how believable this this would be in a medieval world without widespread immigration, they naturally just assume that every time and place throughout history has always been this way. Don't question us, just accept what we tell you and move on. Man, I'd love to show this to a pub full of Witcher fans in Poland. It would be fucking wild. And it all looks so cheap and tacky as well, from the sets to the costumes and the battle scenes. Whether it's dilapidated villages or huge palaces, everything looks like it was built about 5 minutes before shooting started. There's no sense of this being a real lived-in world with a rich history. Character outfits are completely inappropriate for the locations they're using them, and supposedly epic fight scenes look more like a couple of dozen not particularly enthusiastic extras swinging plastic swords at each other. Making a prequel that's compelling and interesting enough in its own right to bring audiences in is difficult enough even when it's based off a popular show, but the problem is that The Witcher wasn't even that popular even with Henry Cavill in the lead role. Speaking of which, I'm beginning to understand why the guy basically lost his mind trying to work with the absolute morons behind the scenes. Make no mistake, Blood Origin is the Witcher show that they always wanted to write, where they don't even have to pretend to care about the lore or the source material, because there isn't any, and they have total creative freedom to tell the story they want to tell. A boring, trite, simplistic wish fulfillment story weighed down by tedious helpings of intersectional feminism and nonsensical diversity and inclusion quotas, where the colour of your skin, what you've got between your legs and who you like to fuck is more important than your actual character and personality. It's not often I use the word woke to describe anything, because like so many other words, it's been overused to the point of redundancy these days. But in this case, I really can't think of anything more appropriate to describe this absolute cancer of a show. The Witcher Blood Origin is yet another woke disaster in a year that's practically been defined by them. It's what happens when people with an axe to grind instead of a story to tell are put in charge of a massively popular IP built by far greater minds than their own. And it's yet another reason why Henry Cavill is probably thanking his lucky stars that he was able to put this calamity behind him. Don't feel bad about it, Henry, you were far too good for them. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.